The movie opens with John, a special operations officer struggling with the loss of his friends from the war. He contemplates suicide, loading bullets into a revolver and leaving one chamber empty. By chance, he fires into the empty chamber. Later, while shopping for alcohol, John remains indifferent when two armed robbers attack the supermarket. When one of the gunmen threatens him, John calmly suggests shooting him in the head for a quicker death. After disarming the frightened gunman, John strikes him with the gun. When the other assailant attacks with a knife, John wrests it away and incapacitates him. Rather than killing him, John's memories of war scenes lead him to spare the man. He retrieves the stolen money and returns it to the supermarket before heading home, where his deteriorating mental state drives him to exercise excessively and punch the wall. The next day, John's sister, Cindy, pays him a visit. She expresses concern about his lack of response to her calls. During dinner at a restaurant, Cindy discovers that John has stopped taking antidepressants and has switched medications. She reveals that she's heading to Brazil to work with a humanitarian aid organization in the favelas. On the second day, Cindy says goodbye to John while he sleeps and heads to Rio de Janeiro. In Brazil, two officers explore the slums when a little girl approaches them, reporting a girl's body found on the beach. Catarina rushes to the scene and discovers Cindy, John's sister, in critical condition. An ambulance takes Cindy to the hospital. Meanwhile, at the American embassy, Brazilian officers Tygo and Carlo inform the American ambassador about Cindy's situation. The ambassador contacts John, urging him to join the investigation into his sister's murder. After hearing the news, John swiftly traveled to Brazil. Meanwhile, Catarina, along with the officers, Tygo and Carlo, investigated the same case. Tygo ridiculed Catarina for distributing drinks to gain cooperation from locals. While dealing with arms dealers, Tygo faced opposition from street gangs. To settle matters, Tygo proposed a challenge. If the gang's fighter won, he'd stop investigating. If the cop won, they'd continue. The gang leader agreed and sent one of his men to confront Carlo. In a fight between Carlo and the opponent, Carlo emerged victorious. Tygo asserts his commitment to investigating the neighborhood thoroughly. John arrives in Brazil, greeted by his friend, U.S. Ambassador Manny. They visit Cindy, who lies in a coma after a critical incident. John questions why anyone would harm his sister, who dedicated herself to helping the poor through volunteer work. Determined, John accompanies Tygo to the accident scene, where he notices many girls working as prostitutes. Tygo introduces him to Catarina. Then John reacts to gunshots by taking Catarina's gun, only to realize that the sound came from a passing car, not gunfire. Local gangs notice John's weapon and confront him. Thiago intervenes, calming the situation down. John apologizes, explaining his fatigue from a recent trip. Catarina leads John to the scene, but he knows finding witnesses is unlikely due to the gang-controlled area. Later, John visits his sister in the hospital. There he observes an Asian nurse injecting something into the medical solution. His sister experiences strange convulsions. Then John seeks help from the nurse, but she's nowhere to be found. The doctor determines that Cindy was injected with a harmful substance. To John's surprise, the nurse he described doesn't exist. Manny and Thiago arrive, assuring John they'll protect Cindy. On the second day, John visits the accident scene and encounters a group of young men. He approaches someone named Kuka, who promptly flees. John chases him, showing Kuka a picture of his sister and asking if he recognizes her. Noticing that Kuka wears his sister's chain, John confronts him. When Kuka remains silent, John resorts to force. Other people intervene, but John prevails and threatens Kuka to reveal the chain's origin. Catarina arrives and asks John to let Kuka go. In this sequence of events, John learns that Cindy had given a chain to this person. He also discovers that this person has a missing sister who used to work with Cindy. John then apologizes to Kuka for hitting him earlier. Kuka tells John that he wants to bring something for him from home. Kuka takes both John and a character named Catarina back to Kuka's home, where Kuka gives John Cindy's diary. John apologizes to Kuka again and asks him to keep the chain. Catarina then informs John that they've noticed many girls disappearing from the neighborhood recently. Concerned, John searches Kuka's car, fearing that a bomb may have been placed under it. Afterwards, they all leave the car. However, an Asian woman who had previously played a nurse in the hospital is watching them as they depart. Later, John is sitting in a bar studying Cindy's diary. He notices that a piece of paper has been cut out, but Cindy left a carbon copy in the notebook. John scans this carbon paper onto a blank sheet and discovers traces of Cindy's writing, including what appears to be a phone number on the cutout paper. After discovering the phone number in Cindy's diary, John calls it. A man who owns a photography studio answers the phone. John asks to meet with this man. John then goes and meets the photographer, whose name is Bruno. Bruno tells John that Cindy had made an agreement with him to film her meeting a certain person. The reason for this was that Cindy had discovered this person was somehow involved in the disappearance of girls from the neighborhood. John asks Bruno to give him copies of the photos, but Bruno refuses, not wanting to get hurt. Without Bruno realizing it, John steals a flash drive containing the photos. After John leaves, Bruno's car explodes, having been rigged with a bomb. John witnesses the Asian woman from earlier at the scene and realizes she's the one who killed Bruno. John chases after the Asian woman, but she's able to get into her car with other people and escape. Then a car with armed men arrives and opens fire on John. John's able to take a gun from a dead security guard and shoot back at the armed men, hitting a number of them. The men then flee. John goes to the embassy and meets a man named Manny. They look at a picture of the man who met with Cindy and see the name of a nightclub reflected in the car window. John and his team visit a nightclub to locate the man who was with Cindy before her accident. John confronts the man in the bathroom, but security intervenes. Undeterred, John enters the bathroom, where he meets a smuggler named Lima. After some forceful persuasion, Lima reveals that someone informed Cindy about his smuggling activities, leading to her unfortunate encounter. John obtains the address of the person responsible for harming his sister and confronts Lima. Meanwhile, Thiago briefs the police about a crackdown on drug dealers and prostitution gangs. Accompanied by Manny, John heads to the location Lima disclosed to uncover the truth behind Cindy's attempted murder. As Thiago and the other officials conduct raids on gangsters, John arrives at the designated spot, where he's greeted by a girl. Upon learning of John's arrival, they contact an Asian girl who was present. She recognizes John and informs them that she doesn't want to upset their leader, Hiramoto. She requests that they quietly eliminate John. A member of Hiramoto's group takes John to a balcony away from the crowd. John observes people delivering girls, including Maria, Kuka's sister. An assailant tries to subdue John, but he fights back and proceeds to the location where the kidnapped girls are. During ongoing police raids targeting drug gangs, an officer chases a gang member. Another officer notices a car with men kidnapping young girls. After engaging them, one of the kidnappers is killed, and an Asian suspect is arrested. Seeking backup, the officer contacts Thiago. When Thiago and Carlo arrive, they find the arrested gang member. Unexpectedly, Thiago turns the gun on the Asian man and kills the officer. Thiago then informs the Asian girl that Cindy, John's sister, has been eliminated as agreed upon. The girl informs John that he'll receive payment at the port. Thiago, the traitor, conspired with Japanese Yakuza gangs to harm Cindy. Carlo was also involved. The Asian girl contacts Hiramoto, revealing John's location and false smuggling claims. Hiramoto instructs her to guide the girls and evacuate guests. She's tasked with killing Cindy at the hospital. Hiramoto orders Thiago to eliminate John. Lima, who leaked information, is killed by Hiramoto. John confronts numerous people. Thiago calls for backup to arrest John. When Thiago arrives, he tells John to surrender. Then Katerina arrives, and John informs them that a man named Hiramoto was the one who tried to kill Cindy. John tells Thiago and Katerina that he witnessed Hiramoto bringing a girl to a specific location. John takes Thiago and Katerina to the location, but they don't find any girls there because Hiramoto has already removed all of the girls from the site. John then tells Thiago that he has evidence showing Hiramoto has been smuggling girls out of the country. He shows them the forged shipping statements that he found. Thiago thanks John and takes the statements, saying he'll investigate the matter himself. Thiago asks Katerina to take John away. Once outside, John realizes that Thiago is a traitor, as Thiago had asked John to give him a bag belonging to a character named Lima, even though John hadn't mentioned Lima to Thiago. John tells Katerina to go protect Cindy at the hospital. At the hospital, the Asian woman is trying to kill Cindy, but Katerina arrives in time and kills the Asian woman. Meanwhile, Thiago goes to the port to collect money. Unbeknownst to Thiago, John is hiding in the trunk of his car. John sees that the gang is transporting girls via shipping containers, planning to sell them in Japan. John calls his friend Manny and asks for help, also telling Manny that Thiago is working with Hiramoto. John then gets into a fight with Hiramoto's gang, shooting and killing several of them. When Hiramoto realizes John is there, he orders all of his men to kill John, but John manages to kill a large number of them. John then hits and engages in combat with both Thiago and a character named Carlo. Hiramoto tries to kill John with a sword, but John's fighting skills are superior to theirs. John is able to stab Carlo with his foot, and then takes a sharp tool on a chain from Thiago and stabs Thiago in the chest with it. That leaves Hiramoto as the only one left. still wielding a sword and trying to kill John. John grabs a piece of iron and fights against Hiramoto. Hiramoto hides a knife under the hilt of his sword and ends up stabbing John with it. Hiramoto then taunts John, saying he fights better than John's sister. This makes him angry, and he starts hitting and attacking Hiramoto aggressively. John ultimately kills Hiramoto. Then John approaches the dying Thiago, who hands him a key to a safe at a train station. Thiago reveals that the safe contains names of Hiramoto's associates. Thiago's motivation was escaping poverty to be with his family. He requests John to end his life, but John leaves a single bullet gun. As John exits, a gunshot confirms Thiago's suicide. The police arrive and free all the kidnapped girls, including Kuka's sister, Maria. John visits his sister Cindy at the hospital, where the doctor says it'll take a long time for her to recover and be able to walk again. John meets his old friend, Manny, who offers John an unofficial role working with the government. John initially refuses, but agrees after Manny says the government will cover Cindy's medical treatment. Manny gives John a file on their first operation, and with that, the movie ends.